Michael Van Runkle here for HotCars.com. I'm covered in dirt right now because I'm at Gunsite Academy in Arizona. I'm here at an event hosted by Yamaha, Glock, and Shoot United, where we've done 2 full days of John Wick-style tactical firearms training and gotten to drive the whole lineup of Yamaha's off-road side-by-sides and ATVs. We got the Wolverines and the Grizzlies, but what I was really excited to drive was the YXZ, because unlike so many other side-by-sides, even the highest performance ones from Polaris and Can-Am, Yamaha still builds the YXZ with a good old-fashioned sequential gearbox. This thing's got paddle shifters like a Lamborghini. How does that translate to off-road driving? Well, let's hop in and go for a ride, but first, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. It really helps us out. Thanks. You hop in the YXZ and you feel a little lower. You can adjust the steering wheel. It's sort of like a little bit more of a cockpit. Put your hands on the steering wheel and you've got column mounted paddle shifters. I was worried they're not on the steering wheel proper, so if you're steering a lot, you still have to use them, but they're nice and big and they're easy to get to. You've got a big tachometer you can check out. It'll give you a shift light and tell you when to shift, but really all you have to do is listen to that engine and know when to go bang, bang. It reminds me of the F4 car I drove, which has a pneumatic air shifter. This thing's violent and it's so much fun. This is the YXZ 1000R SS, which stands for Sport Shift, indicating those paddle shifters. It's got a 999cc 3-cylinder engine. Yamaha doesn't officially release power stats, but if you go on the CARB website, apparently it's rated at 114 horsepower. All in, this base XTR package starts at $23,299, which is pretty competitive, even if you're looking at those Razors with 225 horsepower and the super wide suspension. But driving this thing here at Gunsite, I've actually liked how small and nimble it is. It's got a shorter wheelbase. It's only 64 inches wide. So you're getting around in these little bushes a lot. And then when you get out into the open, you can put that power to the ground and have a lot more fun because it doesn't have a CVT. On the other hand, you can get a YXZ with a good old-fashioned clutch pedal and a sequential gearbox that has first down and then neutral and then second because they cribbed it from a motorcycle. I gotta try one of those, but the paddle shifters are pretty fun too. And if you really need that much more power, Yamaha does sell a turbo kit for the YXZ. It costs about $6 grand, and they say it increases power by 60%, again, because they won't give out concrete figures. So 60%, 114 horsepower, you're looking at 175 horsepower, and this YXZ only weighs about 1,650 pounds, whereas the Razors and the Can-Am Maverick X3s are more like 1,800, 2,000, 2,200. So you've got a smaller package with a transmission that's much more efficient and way more fun and sounds awesome, as opposed to getting that CVT just sapping your power all the time. And it really translates when you're out there going fast in the dust, but then you get into a little bit of the tighter stuff and you can choose your gears pretty well for going up steep climbs. Now I will say that the YXZ with the sequential that we're using here does get a little bit bogged down if you're at really low speed. Say you come into a little dip and then you need to climb and it's got some traction issues going on because it's soft or slippery, the transmission can get bogged down. It will downshift for you. It will not upshift for you, and I tested that for science. It just off the rev limiter, which is also a ton of fun if you want to do that after the shift light comes on, and you definitely should have popped that plus paddle. It's a side-by-side, so you can have it in 2-wheel drive, which means it's rear drive, lock differential, spool axle, or you've got 4-wheel drive, or you can lock the front differential also. You've got a 4,500 pound Warn winch, which doesn't have an auto stop feature, but that's always good to have a winch when you're off-roading. In my Cayenne and my Montero, I always get nervous when I go out in a group of people and we don't have a winch. just in case. This sunshade thing is actually really cool. It's designed to create airflow in the back because right behind me here is the intake for the massive radiator that cools that 999cc engine. And then the roof here actually creates airflow that cycles back into a rear air intake that can additionally help the radiator stay cool, which is more important if you've got a windshield. They've got an optional windshield for this thing, of course, and you can get soft coverings. And if you had that, then you wouldn't be able to get as much airflow straight back into the radiators. So they've added that extra rear intake for cooling. The engine, on the other hand, is pretty exposed. You can just check it out, which is actually kind of fun, and it's all right there. Yamaha on their other vehicles does use sort of a belt-driven system. It's not like the Polaris and the Can-Am CVTs in that they offer a 10-year belt warranty. And that doesn't mean that they want to just replace your belts all the time. It means that their system uses a transmission that shares oil with the engine and then sends it through a belt to the wheels. That's pretty cool because the reliability of side-by-sides is a major concern. I would like to think that the Yamaha YXZ is probably going to be even more reliable because it's got that sequential, and it's not like you can be frying the clutch if you had the manual version, which I do want to try, but I am worried I will fry the clutch of. To be fair to Polaris and Can-Am, the suspension of the YXZ is definitely a step behind, but it's still pretty good. They're the Fox RC2 shocks, which means they're fully adjustable for rebound and compression in both directions. Though it's not a push button system and it doesn't have a touch screen, it does pretty well. And when you're flying around, even if you're not reaching those super high speeds in the desert, at least in this thing, you're banging through the gears. If Polaris or Can-Am had a sequential setup like this, oh man, I just can't believe they're not doing it yet. It's a real shame. The radiator reminds me of Big Ollie, the off-roading Bronco that Parnelli Jones raced in Baja and recently sold for, what was it, $1.6 million, and then someone took it back to Baja and flipped it over. Because we got the radiator right here, like Big Ollie. The exposed engine makes me a little nervous. Yeah, it's cool to look at and maybe it's a little easier to work on, but what about all the grit and grime that can now get in there because it's not enclosed? The YXZ's price point definitely makes it attractive, but of course, this is the side-by-side industry, so you could throw on a bunch of options. They've got spare mounts, you can get the windshield, you can get mud covers for the wheels, you can get different wheels and tires. It's all about what you want and how much you want to spend when it comes to side-by-sides. But in terms of driving dynamics, I really enjoyed getting a chance to check out the YXZ. In the tighter stuff, it was perfect here at Gunsite. After a day of shooting, when we got to really hone our skills and focus, we were out there driving and you're really learning how to focus on what's going on with the vehicle. I find myself much more centered and experiencing the balance of these side-by-sides and the ATV, which is all about weight transfer. With the YXZ being so nimble, going between the pinions and going up and down in the little ravines and in the ruts, it was just a ton of fun. If I had to make one complaint about the YXZ, it would be Yamaha's steering system, which uses a sensor in the steering column to adjust assist based on speed and torque. And sometimes it feels a little light. When you're going nice and fast, it firms up noticeably, and I like it then, but it's a little too light almost if you're going slow and you're trying to make a tight turn. This thing will make those tight turns, but it takes a lot of turning of the steering wheel to do it. And it's just sort of, maybe because I'm a little bit of a bigger and stronger driver, I want to be able to just flip it through there and not have to like crank twice and then let go. And then there's one feature that we didn't even get to explore that I would have to try out if it was my vehicle. They probably don't want us doing it all day long in these things because it's a launch mode. You can hold both paddle shifters with your foot on the brake, a little light comes up, and then you take your foot off the brake, rev that throttle, and you can choose your throttle, and then you let go of the paddles and you'll launch. And they made that system so that you can adjust your RPMs for your launch, specifically because when they introduced the paddle shifting system, they didn't want the paddle shift equipped YXZ to be outperformed by a good driver in a manual version that could just rev it and launch with the clutch pedal. So I'd love to give that a try, but of course if it was a bunch of journalists out here on a hot day after shooting all day long with Glock and Shoot United, then they're probably gonna torch that clutch and we would have gotten to the end of the day and some people like me wouldn't have been able to experience it. So they kept that off the docket, but I really want to give that a try. And of course, try one that's got a clutch pedal and you could just bang that sequential shifter along as you're blasting off. The wheels and tires on this thing, they're 29-inch staggered setups, so they're narrower up front and wider at the back. They're Maxxis Carnage tires, legit bead locks, which I do appreciate because flats on side-by-sides are a known problem that happens simply because they're such capable machines that you're gonna go out and bang into rocks and bang into tree branches all day long. It's been a really awesome experience here for these 2 days, and I'm so glad that I got a chance to try out the YXZ a little bit, along with Yamaha's other side-by-sides. Check out HotCars.com to learn more about all their vehicles and the competition. I'm pretty sure from the driving footage and the sound of me chuckling as I'm using those pedal shifters, you can tell I really enjoyed this experience with the Yamaha side-by-side lineup, and especially the YXZ. Big thanks to Yamaha and Glock and Shoot United for bringing us out here to Gunsite. Big thanks to the Gunsite Academy instructors for teaching us so much about shooting and making this such an educational and enjoyable program to really get into the spirit of outdoorsy adventure with these side-by-sides. I hope you learned something watching this, and as always, before you sign off, if you could please like this video and subscribe to our channel. It'll really help us beat the algorithm. Thanks.